Harrow. Harrow could not wait to share the news regarding the Low King's reinforcements with his family and the village. They'll be ecstatic. They'll be safe. As members of a town that practically bordered the Rhysig lands, the townsfolk were quick to recall the historic threat of barbaric Rhysig that had constantly plagued their ancestors and loomed over them now. The peace treaty had held with the Rhysig for generations, but even so, the town's memory endured for far longer. Fagori's priest frequently included such tales in her daily preaching, and the chief based new statutes around the ingrained fears. Before his mother had been attacked, Harrow hadn't particularly minded the Rhysig, mostly because he had never encountered one personally, but distrust for their kind sowed itself into his heart. Everything his town's political and spiritual leadership taught him seemed to be true. Soldiers would rectify everything upon their arrival. The force would trail behind Harrow by a few days as they needed to establish a plan to protect the northern border, but their presence would deter the creatures. Harrow was sure of it. Beyond all else, he was delighted that King Tanzanite had listened and believed him. He had feared that the king would prioritize other issues above his own, because Harrow was young. But the king had trusted him, without even sending his personal transportation mage to check the validity of his claims. On his return march through the Wan Desert's scorching sands, Harrow contemplated the existence of the Rhysig. Why can't Rhysig populate Hagam's sister planets, Yarnd or Remse, and feast off the dimension hoppers or harpies instead? Why can't they pursue the blood of the sea folk, or other elementals, or different creatures entirely? Is there any connection to the demoness priest that woman back at the castle had spoken of? Had the Rhysig been cursed to become such violent beasts? Or is this just their nature? Harrow just didn't know. He checked his empty leather pouch once more to be certain no more water remained from the last oasis he visited. He rubbed his tongue around his mouth wistfully. He tasted dry nothingness. The unyielding suns should have been named the implacable and the relentless, rather than the lonely and the blessed. They would melt his dark sable skin right off his bones. He had been too impatient and made haste, despite the unforgiving conditions. In turn, he finished his water too quickly. At least he could draw water from his town's well as soon as he returned home. Fagori would be another half-day trek, and he was also out of food. He had finished his last pomegranate that morning. To distract himself from his thirst and hunger, he imagined the looks on his younger siblings' faces when he explained everything he had seen. He pictured his mother coming in from tending the chickpeas and taking a seat in the chair his father had built for her before he passed. She would rub Harrow's scalp while he sat on the floor in front of her, one of his sisters on his lap. His brother would sit next to him, hugging their mother's leg. His expression would drop in awe when Harrow described the part about meeting Low King Tanzanite. But if he lost their attention, they would play with the loose straw covering the floor. It was with this thought that he arrived at Fagori. The climate reprieve he expected did not greet him. The tall grasses surrounding the village were browning, and the crops wilted. Master Stratus isn't maintaining the weather barrier. No one farmed the nearby fields. No one prepared the farming equipment. No one brought water from the well, and no one tended the herds. The herds were missing too. All that sat were homes and tangerine banners limply hanging in the stagnant air. By this turn of the suns, an overwhelming waft of turmeric should have been coming from the chief's home as his wife prepared their evening meal, as she had every day since Harrow could remember. Where is everyone? Something's wrong. He moved off the arid aisle and hid in the tall grasses. Movement at the town's perimeter caught his eye. A dark gray creature emerged. It was taller than a human, but not by much. It patrolled in a wide circle, its long clawed toes kicked up the sandy dirt as it continued its circling. Its jagged forearms and hooked hands looked particularly dangerous. Unlike the pair he had seen wandering the halls at the Mosaic Castle, Harrow suspected this Rhysig was violent. He wasn't sure if he was within range of the Rhysig senses, but he feared he was, and he crouched lower in the grasses. Despite his trepidation, his body calmed, probably due to his complete exhaustion and dehydration. His worries turned toward his family's safety. Harrow clenched his fists, enraged that the Raisaglai had invaded his town, potentially killed his kin, and strutted around as if it were their village now. Similarly, he was disheartened because he could do nothing to fight a Raisaglai. He had no weapons, he desperately needed water, but he couldn't obtain some even when it was so close. The nearest town would be another half-day's journey, and the third sun was setting. If he went, he'd risk traveling at night when other Raisaglai would awaken. Whatever he chose, he couldn't stay crouched in the grasses. One of the Raisaglai would spot him, even if the current sentry hadn't. What should I do? Join the soldiers and save my family, even though they might be days away? Or run to the next town to spread the warning and find some food and water? He knew which he wanted to choose, but he also knew which option held a better chance of survival. Harrow retreated through the grasses, hoping not to draw the sentry's attention. He hadn't been noticed approaching the village. He hoped he wouldn't when sneaking away either. Withdrawing step by step, he watched the sentry until the grasses blocked his view. As soon as he put enough distance from his home, he ran as fast as he could. His only reprieve was that the heat of the suns no longer scorched his body. While he sprinted, he imagined how pleasant it would be to drink water or take a slower pace. He had to remind himself what waited behind him if he slowed. As the sand cooled, the trek became easier in one sense, while still hard in trying to persevere through the distance. Early in the evening, at first moon high, Harrow arrived at his neighboring town, Dresna. He had made great time. He had darted for their well, navigating around a crowd washing up prior to bed. He cranked up a heavy little basket with exhausted arms. With nothing to pour the basket's water into, he plunged his face straight into it, trying not to suffocate while simultaneously trying to get as much water down as possible. His large lips gulped massive volumes of water, but his stomach couldn't keep up. He quenched his thirst but repulsed his appetite. He retched loose vomit and then sipped more to replenish himself, but not to risk expelling it again. His throat burned from the acid and his mouth tasted like sour bile. There wasn't much he could do for it. His uncle Seed helped him to his feet. "Are you all right, Harrow?" Harrow shook his head. "Raisaglai have taken over Fagori. I don't know where they've taken everyone, but they're gone. I didn't see any corpses. I wanted to warn the other towns." Those who had overheard Harrow edged closer. "Raisaglai? Why all of a sudden?" one of the bathers asked. "The king's transportation mage warned of potential Raisic invasions yesterday. We thought it was ridiculous," Seed said. "It's true, and I was the one to warn the king. I've been traveling since. When I returned home, Raisaglai were patrolling the edge of the town," Harrow said. "Is your mother safe at least?" "I don't think so. The first night they attacked, they fed on her. She had bite marks." "I can't believe they would harm Ageline! This is an outrage! Taking over a town, putting our souls at risk! This must stop immediately!" a voice called from the forming mob. The others in the crowd muttered furiously. "The Low King is sending soldiers north. I pray it's enough. But if you come across any spawn, they should go to the capital until the threat is past. We can't risk their safety," Harrow pleaded to the crowd. "There aren't any spawn in Dresna, but one was traveling toward Hisafe a half turn of the moons ago. It was probably coincidence they headed there," someone mentioned from the crowd. "Good! If any more pass this way, please encourage them to," Harrow said. "You aren't staying? Where will you go?" Seed asked. "I'll back up the mage's warning and alert the other northern towns. I'll recruit help for our troops and tell the spawn to seek shelter. Then I'm joining Tanzanite's army. I'll capture a Raisaglai and find out what happened to my family." Unexpectedly, Harrow received a cheer from the crowd. It stunned him to receive praise for his plan. He was unsure how to respond. "Start on that after you've got enough food and water in you. Your arms are thin as stalks. You'll need to replenish your fat stores for the road. You'll also need sleep. Your Uncle Straw and I have a spare cot that you can use." As Seed discussed logistics, the crowd dispersed. A few stragglers lingered to ask questions about Harrow's mother being a spawn, but Seed shooed them away. "The boy's exhausted. Leave him be. Your Uncle Straw's asleep, but I'll kick up the fire anyway. He sleeps too much as it is, and you need a decent meal." "Thank you, Seed. I appreciate it," Harrow said, following him to his dark house. Seed lit a candle. "What are you doing?" Straw asked, sitting up in a large bed to the side of the home. "Raisaglai have taken over Fagori. Harrow escaped here, but he needs food. I'm throwing something together for him, Seed said, gathering a bowlful of freshly picked chickpeas and greens from a side table to make a soup. No, I'll make it. Straw got out of bed. You're terrible at making soups. Never put in the right amount of ginger. Hello, Harrow. I'm sorry to hear about that. Straw slipped on a loose linen tunic and grabbed the ingredients from Seed's hands. Seed did not protest. While the three men waited on the soup to cook, Harrow spoke of his journey, his meeting with their low king, and both encounters with the Rhysagli. He described what the creatures looked like, the discolored, bulky beasts that they were. Its form was alien to me. Its face looked like an insect shell, unable to form expressions. They smell weird, like the strongest, strangest combination between rotting plants and body odor. The exterior of the limbs had hard plates that matched the face, but fleshy skin wrinkled at the joints, and the one I saw in Figori had ugly gray plates and flesh. Anxious looks passed between his temporary caretakers. Perhaps I should not say these things right before trying to sleep. I'm sure a sword could cut through the soft flesh, but their exterior shells might block it. If we could get some combative and defensive mages to fight them, we'd wipe them out easily. I'm hoping that King Tanzanite sends them all. That'll be for another day. For now, the soup is ready. Eat quickly so we can extinguish the flight and turn in for the night. Straw poured a large bowl for Harrow. Starving, he could barely wait for the soup to cool before eating. His tongue burnt, but he didn't care. His only self-control was to eat slowly enough that his stomach didn't reject it. He thanked Seed and Straw for their hospitality and blew out the candle after he climbed into their spare bed. Before heading out the following day, he refilled his water. Straw gave him crops freshly picked that morning, and the town gave him a few resources to take with him on his trek. Among the items were a candle, flint, steel, an extra sack for water, and another blanket. He wished for a weapon more than anything, but he understood that the townsfolk might want to keep those for themselves, given the circumstances that brought him to Dresna. Straw drew a rough map of the other nearby towns, but he wasn't familiar with anything beyond the Arid Isle on one side and a town called Kanesh on the other. Harrow assumed he'd run into a cartographer in a larger town or city. Seed gave him a few lead coins. Together they were worth a small shard of any standard gemstone, and it was more than Harrow had on him. He knew how rare it was for merchants to traverse to their small villages to trade wares. 3 coins were probably the savings of the 2 men for the past turn of the moons. Harrow left at second sunrise. Despite the extra weight of his new supplies, he kept a decent pace. Along his way, he caught a savanna rabbit and a vole. He didn't run out of food before the next town, but the townsfolk did not know him and regarded him with suspicion. He worried he would receive the same reception in every town, but it was not always so. After visiting several towns, the ones down the road expected him. Word of mouth traveled faster than he could. Realistically, it was the transportation mage seeking the spawn who had spread the word, but it still spooked Harrow the first time someone he hadn't met asked if he was the captured spawn's offspring. Once the towns knew he was coming, there was often a made bed and food prepared for him. It was fortunate that his fellow countryfolk showed such hospitality, because he couldn't have afforded the luxuries otherwise. He would have had to sleep outside and catch prey like when he was traveling. During his journey, he began to pick up a variety of people who wished to join him on his quest to slay the Rhysagli and rescue his town and family. Their main motivation aimed to prevent the same fate befalling their loved ones in their own towns. His first recruit was a young female glassblower named Remer of Crusade. After he shared his story with her town, she voiced her desire to follow him. Harrow hadn't intended to travel with others, but he hadn't wanted to sway her decision to support the cause either. It felt odd traveling with another person, but she was pleasant company. Harrow sometimes had difficulty finding subjects to discuss with her, but she kept the conversation going, no matter how many days they trekked between towns. Harrow and Remer traveled alone for a short while. Soon, their group had other eager additions, and with each new body, Harrow grew more confident in his goal. With each additional person, the group covered less ground per day. When it had just been Remer and him, they maintained his pace. He experienced a pang of resentment to no longer travel alone with Reamer, but he wasn't sure why. He told himself it was stupid, and he needed to focus on the overarching objective. People of all professions joined them. Laborers, artisans, merchants, and entertainers alike. The only classes of society they didn't have were mages and nobles. It took a full lunar cycle to cover the distance, but eventually, Harrow warned all the towns across the northern border of both Sovane and Verdun about the Risic threat. Harrow decided not to bother to spread the message to those farther into King Tanzanite's and Queen Hessenite's territory. He'd leave that responsibility to the town's couriers. But the distractions had ended. He needed to direct his Sovani recruits to the capital of Hisafe. Then, he'd become a soldier, retake his town, and save his family.